Greetings, Internet, and on this episode of From the Basement, we're going to take a look at encounters, conversations, and how we can link them together. The first thing we're going to take a look at is how we can allow the player to choose between one of several different encounter types. In this example, an easy, standard, and hard encounter. To do this, we're going to enlist the aid of the talking horse, Mr. Ed, who can talk, of course. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to Mr. Ed, turn on conversations, and we're going to have to enter in the advanced dialogue editor here. And what we want to do, we want to give the player three options, and depending on which of those three options they choose, will spawn that particular instance, and then we need to somehow disable these options. So in this case, I'm just going to make Mr. Ed disappear. So we'll go in here and responses. We'll have an easy, standard, and a hard response. And then from these, we will create an easy choice. Oops. And you want to put text in here, of course, always. That forces you to. But as I've discovered earlier, if you don't put text here when you're trying to choose which conversation you want, it shows up empty in the conversation list, which makes it really challenging. Alright, and so here, standard, hard. Okay, well, that should grab this one. So, standard. And finally, hard choice. Put a choice in there. Okay, so we've got this set up. Now we've got our first problem here, and that is we want Mr. Ed to disappear when one of those options is chosen. But if I come in here and I say disappear when, that's what I want, dialog prompt reached, and if I choose each of these options here, this is wrong. This is an AND operation. The logic we're actually telling the game is I want this NPC to disappear when I have reached this prompt, and this prompt, and this prompt. That's not what we want. I want the NPC to disappear once any of these have been chosen. There's no way at this point right here to force it to do an OR operation. It will always be an AND operation. So instead what we need to do is go back into our conversation dialog editor here, and we're going to link all of these to one choice. So here we have it set up on from the easy choice, and what we're going to do is we're going to redirect the other two to this. This is also how you do conversation hubs, and how you do this is on the little arrow pointing to the dialog end box. If you mouse over it, you will notice it changes to a four-way arrow cursor. Press and hold the mouse button. You'll have to hold it for about a second, and now I can drag that arrow over to the other box. Do the same thing with hard. And now I've got both of these redirecting to over here. Come back to my NPC, Mr. Ed. Disappear when. This one right here is chosen. And now the fight will work. Now, assuming that I link these guys up first, of course. So I'm going to go to my encounters. To set the encounters like this, you must be in layout mode. You cannot be in detail mode. In detail mode, you're trying to select the individual NPCs. You don't want to do it that way. Just for clarity's sake, you want to be in layout mode to do this. So I'm going to select this guy here, dialog prompt reached, and I'm going to select easy. Now, this is why for development choices, you probably want to not have your story-related quest here and have things like choice 1, choice 2, choice 3, things like that. So that way you can very easily verify that easy choice, easy difficulty, okay, I made the right one, right link there. Standard, standard, that's good. And hard, hard. Alright, everything seems to be linked up, so save, because I'm paranoid. Although it's not paranoia if the computers really are out to get you. And as soon as it's done taking an abnormal that long time saving, there we go. Play map. Let's see if Mr. Ed does indeed summon the correct encounter. Okay. So, Mr. Ed, let's choose the hard encounter. Now, notice it spawned before I was done with the conversation. You need to keep that in mind, that these are going to spawn before it's done with the conversation. Now, the player is going to have a moment or two before the NPCs start attacking. But you might want to consider placing the encounters so that the aggro radius, that circle you see in the editor mode, is out of range. So that way the player doesn't get attacked before the conversation ends. And of course, Mr. Ed disappeared, which is exactly what we wanted to see. Alright, now let's take a look at our second example here, which is going to be a little bit more of a complicated situation. I want to be able to talk to this dragonling, choose one of these 3 different encounters. Once I have defeated that encounter, talk to the dragonling again, and be able to choose one of these 3 encounters. So the setup on this one is a little bit different. So of course we're going to start off with our conversation in the dialogue editor. Now this time we're going to have to do a couple of levels here. The dragonling's a little bit unsure about his size. He's defensive about it. So first we've got to think about what states we want. Well, our first state's pretty easy. We haven't had a fight yet. If I can type properly, it would help. And from here, once we go into this mode, which encounter, and we're going to have our 3 choices, just like what we had with Mr. Ed. And this first setup here is gonna look pretty darn close. It's gonna look very darn similar to here. So this will be easy, standard, hard. We are going to then put in the dialogue prompts. We're going to put in our link point here. And end. We're going to link these up, click and hold, drag, click and hold, drag. And this is Dragon Easy, Dragon Standard, and Dragon Hard. Now, I don't want to get down into this more than once. I should only want to see this once. So what I'm going to do is back up here. I'm going to say disable when on this first response. And I'm going to say, when, nope, not component complete. Dialogue prompt reached. Make sure that I'm on the right conversation. It's very important, especially when you've got lots of conversations going on. Make sure you're in the right conversation. I'm going to say, okay, once I reach this point, I want to disable this entire chain. And so now I can go back to the map and do the linkage pretty much the same way we did the others. So I'm going to come in here, Dialog prompt reached. I'll get bigger. Easy. So, easy, easy. All right. Go on to the next one. Dialog prompt, bigger, standard, okay. Standard, standard. And finally, I forgot to name a conversation. I'll get bigger. Dragon hard, cult of dragon hard, okay. So we've got that linked up. Now comes the question of how do we trigger the next step? There's one of 3 possible encounters that the player is going to deal with. That means you have to deal with all 3 possibilities. So it starts getting a little bit messy at this point. So Advanced Dialog Editor, come back up here. And we're going to have to add in 3 new responses. And the reason why we're going to need 3 is because we're going to have one for each of our possibilities. We're going to have fight 1 easy. We're going to have fight 1 standard. And we're going to have fight 1 hard. And how we'll link these up is we'll enable them when component complete. So we're going to say enable component complete, which is a good way of saying when this combat is done, trigger something. So, easy. So, F1 easy, enabled when we defeat the Cult of the Dragon easy. Our standard encounter, enable when component complete. Cult of Dragon standard. And F1 hard, enable when component complete. Cult of Dragon hard. Now, what we don't want to do is I don't want to actually try and handle the logic for all 3 of these in individual branches. If I did that, I would have an exponential explosion of encounters that I would have to keep track of. Instead, I want to do the redirect trick again. So I'll add a response off of my easy, and I will redirect standard and hard both to that conversation point. Now I can repeat this logic over here. I can ask which Mind Flayer encounter, that is the next group of enemies, and response 1 easy standard and hard. Close that out. Add on, add on, add on, add on. Redirect. Oops, went too fast that time. Hold, drag, hold, drag. This is go fight 2. End. And for all 3 of these options, now notice because this is starting to get a little bit big, is when I click on it, I don't see my window. Make sure you're dragged over to the left to be able to see your window. And so on all of these, F1ESH, I'm going to want to do a disable when dialog prompt reached. I'll get bigger. And this time I want this one, the Mind Flayer one. So I need to do that for F1E, F1S. Get bigger. And F1H, disable dialog. Bigger. Fight 2. Yep, fight 2. There we go. And of course, put this in Mind Easy. mind standard, and mind hard. Alright, so we're ready for linkage back over at the map. So mind flayer, easy, appear when, dialog prompt reached. I'll get bigger, mind easy. Again, this is the nice thing about having temporary text. I can very easily verify mind easy, mind flayer easy. Okay, awesome, that's what I want. So if I make a mistake, which I'm going to deliberately do this time, dialog prompt reached. I'll get bigger and say I choose Dragon Standard. I can now look and say Dragon Standard, wait, no, Dragon Mind Flayer. No, that's the wrong option. So it's sort of, it really is useful to do this. So, bigger, Mind Standard. And the last encounter, appear when, prompt, bigger, mind hard. Alright. Now we should be ready to go through this chain. So we'll save it. And we will play our map. Alright. Let's test this out. Little dragonling. Yep, haven't had a fight yet. Let's have a standard fight first. Oh, poof, there it goes. In fight. If I try and talk to the dragonling, no conversation options right now. Everything's been disabled. And let's see here. Die, die, die. I said die. Come back and talk to the ling. Fight 1 standard. That's what I expect to see. And this time, let's go for the hard encounter. Oh, and sure enough, there is a hard encounter there. That's a creepy looking thing. Go away, go away, go away, go away. And I uselessly level up. There we go. Everybody's dead. And of course we go back and talk to the ling. There's going to be no conversation options because we haven't continued the chain. You could of course see how this could be continued on for as long as we would want to do it. Now there's one major thing that you got to keep in mind for this. Let's look at our budgets. I currently have 36 actors and I am using up 9 of my 50 encounters for this. Despite the fact that the player is only ever going to get 3 fights out of this, I am using up 9 fights worth of budget. Now, this might not be a bad thing, but depending on the size of this particular map, this could be an issue. This could be a really bad one. Now, if you're giving your player the choice between 3 encounters, 3 options like this, at most you would be able to pull off 16 individual encounters with the 3 choices. 16 times 3, of course, being 48, and have 2 encounters left over for something else. Also, depending on how many NPCs are in each of these counters, you could run into an actor counter limit. Notice I've used up 36 of my actors here. I keep going at this rate. I have another 10 sets of these, and I would be at 360 actors being used up. So, gotta keep in mind, this is going to, you're burning some resources doing this. I would also like to put in a side note, and that is, when I first ran through this, I had an interesting error in which my disable when and enable when triggers would not work until I put in an invisible quest objective on the conversation. Now, how you do an invisible quest objective is story mode. I've got an interact with object, and what I'm going to do is not so important that I actually interact with the object, but rather I'm going to go back into my ling here, go into advanced dialog editor, and I'm going to add in an extra option here. Oops, always forget, gotta be over here on the left. I'm going to add in an extra option I'm going to call this option invis, and I am going to have it enabled when quest objective complete. Now, how this would work is I would assume that once I actually complete this quest objective, I would switch to a different NPC. And so effectively, this invis option here is never going to show up, well, until I interact with that object. Now, I am not entirely sure why I had to do that earlier today. I don't know if there was a bug fix or I just had some editor weirdness going on that day. I don't know. So keep that in mind. If it looks like your enable when, disable when prompts aren't working properly, A, try publishing it and checking in publish mode to see if it's working okay. B, toss in an invisible objective that now won't actually show up in the conversation, but it'll be there to help force the enable when, disable whens to run. It worked fine on this demo, and it also worked fine on the practice previous to this recording this video, so I am not sure what was happening to me earlier in the day when I was initially working on the problem. So hopefully this video has helped show you some interesting possibilities that you can do with conversations and encounters. Until next time.